Welcome back. It's so great to have you joining us for another deep dive today.
Really glad to be here.
So today we are taking a phrase that, you have probably used 100 times, maybe even today when you were, I don't know, leaving a restaurant or heading out to your
Oh,
car.
absolutely, yeah.
We are looking at the phrase, let's roll. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically unpack the incredible multi-layered journey of these two really simple words.
Did you words, yeah.
Right, exactly. We are going to explore how a completely mundane, everyday colloquialism transformed almost overnight into one of the defining battle cries and really cultural touchstones of the 21st century.
Because language is never static. It's this living, breathing thing. And the goal today is to look at not just when this phrase was used throughout history, but why it matters to you and really to all of us.
Yeah.
When you look closely at the source material we are working with today, which gives us a really comprehensive historical and cultural breakdown of the phrase, you see how language actually acts as a mirror.
It really does, right? It reflects a society's resilience, its collective grief, its shifting culture, its history. We are essentially tracing the life cycle of an idiom today.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because the central premise here is that a phrase we just casually toss around has this hidden, heavy, and incredibly profound history.
Mm-hmm.
It perfectly illustrates how human events basically force language to evolve.
Yeah.
Now, going into this, I assume the phrase was a product of maybe the 1980s or 90s action
Well,
movies.
that's what most people think, yeah.
But it goes back way further than that. How did this actually start?
So you have to picture the American West in the 1800s.
Uh,
You have these massive wagon trains getting ready to cross the frontier
right?
The leaders at the head of the train would literally shout, "Wagons roll," to get the journey started. Think about the actual mechanics of the time. The wheels had to physically, literally roll to move that immense weight forward.
To get through the mud and dirt. Exactly. It was all about overcoming physical inertia.
Yeah.
And from there, the terminology naturally became a bit less formal. People shortened it, they adapted it. That's really the beginning of the transition from a literal command about wooden wheels to a metaphorical command about starting a collective mission.
So we start with wagons pushing across the frontier. How does it make the leap from pioneers into the broader cultural lexicon? Did people just start using it in cities or?
It actually sneaks into the broader culture through the military first,
Yeah.
and then through fiction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as early as 1908, the phrase pops up in a military cadence song. It's the one we now know as "The Army Goes Rolling Along."
Oh, sure, I know that one.
Right. And the sources note that this usage likely extended into how early tank crews and artillery units communicated with each other. A great example of this is the phrase's connection to the role of the caissons.
Okay, let's pause there for a second, because I think a lot of people, when they hear the word caisson, they picture something vaguely military, but might not know exactly what it is.
Right. A caisson is essentially a highly reinforced chest on wheels. It's used to carry artillery ammunition.
Got it.
So when you are moving heavy, dangerous explosive equipment with horses or early trucks, rolling isn't just about simple movement.
It's life or death.
Exactly. It's about keeping a massive, unstoppable rhythm going across a chaotic battlefield. That unstoppable momentum is the core DNA of the phrase.
Which explains why writers who focused on military or gritty subjects picked it up later on. You see it bleed into fiction around the mid-20th century, right?
Precisely. In 1940, the legendary sci-fi writer Robert A. Heinlein wrote a story called The Roads Must Roll.
Classic.
Yeah, and in that story, he references a reworded version of those old military cadences, calling it the road songs of the transport cadets. Then a decade later, in 1950, Ernest Hemingway adopts it.
Hemingway, of course.
Right in his novel Across the River and Into the Trees, the protagonist is Colonel Dick Cantwell. Now, Cantwell was actually based on a real World War II commander named Charles Buck Lanham. Hemingway has Cantwell use the phrase, "let's roll," when giving a direct, no-nonsense command to his driver.
Having a gritty, battle-hardened Hemingway character use it really solidifies the phrase association with moving forward with serious purpose.
It anchors it.
Yeah, but what is so wild about the timeline is that while the military and these intense literary figures were using it with all this gravity everyday industries and pop culture, we're adapting it for entirely different, much lighter reasons.
Yeah, mid-century American culture was becoming completely obsessed with speed industry and forward momentum. You start to see military jargon turn into upper-class slang.
Give me an example of that.
A perfect example is the 1937 supernatural comedy film Topper.
Okay.
You have Cary Grant playing this suave protagonist. He turns to his wife, played by Constance Bennett, and says, let's roll. He isn't commanding a tank or starting a wagon train. He just wants to indicate that they should immediately escape their friend's incredibly stuffy office and go find a cocktail.
That is the ultimate contrast. And it wasn't just actors saying it on screen, right? It was happening behind the camera, too.
Right, the whole industry.
The entire film and audio recording industry adopted the verb roll to signal the beginning of a recording. I mean, you hear directors shout, rolling,
Right.
on movie sets to this very day.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, whether it is Cary Grant trying to get a drink, an audio engineer starting a tape reel, or a tank commander moving out, the word inherently implies that a state of rest is ending, action is beginning.
Yeah.
That built-in subconscious meaning of collective action is exactly what made it the perfect vehicle for the much heavier meaning it would take on decades later.
Which brings us to September 11th, 2001. And I want to shift the tone here because the events we are about to discuss are incredibly heavy, but they also represent a story of unimaginable courage.
They absolutely do.
We are looking at the events aboard the hijacked United Airlines Flight 93.
This is the defining moment. It changed not just the country, but how this specific phrase will be remembered for the rest of history.
When you look at the events of that morning, passenger Todd Beamer was on that flight. In the midst of this terrifying, chaotic situation, he tries to place a call to his family using one of the seatback earphones.
Right.
But the phone system is so overwhelmed, or he misdials in the stress of the moment, and the call doesn't go where he expects. He actually gets routed to a customer service representative first, who then passes him on to a supervisor in Chicago named Lisa Jefferson.
Put yourself in Lisa Jefferson's shoes for a moment. You are sitting at a customer service desk, and suddenly you are on the line with an ordinary citizen who is communicating vital, real-time intelligence during a completely unprecedented national crisis.
And Beamer remains incredibly clear-headed as he gathers and reports this intel. He tells Jefferson that one passenger has already been killed. He relays that a flight attendant informed him both the pilot and the co-pilot had been forced from the cockpit and that they might be gravely injured.
Just horrifying to hear.
He is on the phone with Jefferson narrating the events when the plane makes a quick, violent turn.
He is experiencing the hijacking in real time, effectively acting as the eyes and ears for the ground, at a moment when the entire nation's airspace was in total confusion.
Crucially, the passengers on Flight 93 were communicating with people on the ground, so they eventually learned about what had happened at the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. They pieced the puzzle together.
They did.
They realized this wasn't a traditional hostage situation where the plane would just land at an airport and demands would be made. They realized it was a suicide mission. Beamer tells the operator that he and some of the other passengers are formulating a plan. They're going to attack the hijackers and try to regain control of the aircraft.
It is an extraordinary pivot. They recognize the terrible reality of their situation, and they make a collective, immediate decision to fight back to save the lives of unknown people on the ground.
The moment of action arrives. According to Lisa Jefferson, the supervisor on the other end of that airphone, Todd Beamer's last audible words before dropping the phone to storm the cockpit were, "Are you ready?" Okay, let's roll.
What you are witnessing here linguistically, aside from the sheer breathtaking bravery of the act, is a profound transformation. A casual phrase, something used to leave a boring conversation or to cue a film camera, was instantly transfigured.
Right.
In that single breath, "Let's roll" became an immortal statement of extraordinary courage and sacrifice, spoken by ordinary people facing the unthinkable.
It left that airplane and entered the national consciousness in a way no one could have ever predicted. It became this massive rhetorical shift for the entire country. How quickly did it move from a private phone call into the public sphere?
Almost immediately. But I want to be very clear before we look at how the phrase was adopted politically and militarily. It's really vital to look at this strictly as historians.
Okay.
Regardless of where anyone falls on the political spectrum, left or right. We are not endorsing or validating any specific political viewpoints here.
Of course not.
Watching how quickly a phrase moves from a tragic flight into presidential addresses simply shows how desperately the nation was searching for a unifying, active rallying cry in the face of profound trauma. We are neutrally observing how political figures and institutions utilize the immense cultural weight of this newly minted battle cry.
And the timeline shows that President George W. Bush invoked Beamer's words very shortly after the attacks. In an address from the World Congress Center in Atlanta, Georgia on November 8, 2001, President Bush told the crowd, quote, "Some of our greatest moments have been acts of courage for which no one could have been prepared. But we have our marching orders. My fellow Americans, let's roll.
He elevated it from a moment of civilian bravery to a national directive.
He used it again a few months later in the 2002 State of the Union address. The source quotes him saying, "For too long, our culture has said, if it feels good, do it. Now America is embracing a new ethic and a new creed. Let's roll."
By positioning the phrase as a new ethic and a new creed, the government was essentially taking a deeply personal moment of sacrifice and turning it into a unifying national doctrine for the ensuing war on terror. Language operates as a coping mechanism, and the nation needed a phrase that implied fighting back.
The military took that doctrine very literally. The sources show that in early 2002, the United States Air Force Chief of Staff General John P. Jumper issued a highly specific order.
This is a fascinating detail.
He mandated that one airplane in every single USAF squadron, plus all the USAF demonstration planes, had to bear a specific image. It was an eagle on an American flag accompanied by the words, "Let's roll" and "Spirit of 9/11." That nose art was ordered to remain on the planes until the first anniversary of the attack.
Notice the full circle moment there. The phrase started with literal military usage tanks and horse-drawn caissons in 1908, and almost a century later it is painted on the side of supersonic fighter jets. Except this time it isn't just a cadence, it is a memorial to civilian bravery.
Here is where it gets really interesting to me, because it didn't just stay in political speeches or painted on military bases. The explosion of this phrase into pop culture is staggering. It saturated the media landscape, crossing over into incredibly diverse platforms.
Society was trying to process an enormous collective trauma. And because this phrase perfectly captured the transition from victimhood to action, it became the primary tool for processing that grief across almost every creative medium.
The sheer variety of musical genres that adopted the phrase is wild. Just 2 months after the attacks in November 2001, rock legend Neil Young released an immediate visceral single simply titled "Let's Roll," which later ended up on his album Are You Passionate?
A classic songwriter having a real-time reaction to a historical event. But it wasn't just legacy rock artists.
Not at all. The next year, you see it everywhere. The hard rock group LA Guns put out a track called "Okay, Let's Roll" on their album Waking the Dead. Then you have the country music duo the Bellamy Brothers releasing "Let's Roll America" on their album Redneck Girls Forever.
Think about the emotional and spiritual need of the country at that time. Different genres serve different psychological purposes for their listeners.
That is perfectly illustrated by the Christian rock group DC Talk. They were actually on an extended hiatus at the time. They broke their hiatus specifically to record and release a single entitled "Let's Roll."
Breaking hiatus to release one specific song speaks volumes about the cultural weight the phrase carried. For a religious music group, the phrase likely represented a form of spiritual processing, framing Todd Beamer's actions as a definitive example of laying down one's life for others.
And it kept going over the next few years, touching genres you just wouldn't expect. In 2003, the Montreal indie rock band The Stills included a song with the title on their debut album. You had electronic artist Johnny L. releasing a track that actually sampled President Bush's 2002 State of the Union address.
Wow.
Yeah. And 2004, the country and novelty artist Ray Stevens released a self-penned song called "Let's Roll" that directly referenced Todd Beamer in the lyrics. He ended up putting that track on multiple albums over the years.
It is a fascinating cross-section of artistic intent. You have artists like Ray Stevens using the phrase as a direct literal tribute to Beamer, while electronic artists are using it to sample and reflect the political rhetoric of the era.
We can't forget Melissa Etheridge either. Her 2004 song, "Tuesday Morning," was written in honor of another Flight 93 passenger, Mark Bingham, and she consciously concludes that song with the phrase, "Let's roll." It became an undeniable cultural touchstone in music. But it also entered other areas of public life where the integration wasn't always as smooth, especially in sports.
This is where we run into the inherent tension of commodifying tragedy.
Yeah.
When a phrase holds that much sacred weight, utilizing it for entertainment purposes becomes ethically fraught very quickly.
The sources point out that even though the phrase was in common use long before September 11th, many people soon tried to lay claim to it as a trademark after the attacks. In the 2002 college football season, the Florida State Seminoles decided to use "Let's Roll" as their official team slogan. It immediately caused a massive uproar.
You can entirely understand the backlash there. Taking a phrase born from the realization of imminent death to save others and pasting it onto a college football season to hype up a defense, it clashes harshly with the reverence people felt for the sacrifice on Flight 93. They misjudge the raw, emotional recency of the event.
The conflict was eventually resolved when the Todd M. Beamer Foundation officially licensed the trademark to the team. The foundation had actually been granted a trademark for uses of the phrase specifically regarding audio and music, like pre-recorded CDs and tapes.
That licensing step is incredibly telling. It highlights the family and the foundation attempting to maintain some level of stewardship over the phrase. They were trying to ensure that even as it exploded into pop culture and commercial ventures, its origin wasn't entirely diluted or disrespected.
Once that precedent of respectful usage was set, it popped up in other sports as a genuine tribute rather than just a hype slogan. NASCAR driver Bobby Labonte drove a 9/11 tribute car with the words, "Let's roll," painted on the hood at Dover. Detroit Red Wings goaltender Jimmy Howard had the inscription, "Let's roll," put on the back of his goalie helmet as a reference to Flight 93.
Those examples feel much closer to the military jets we talked about earlier. They are quiet, personal acts of memorialization.
Beyond music and sports, the phrase just completely permeated screen media. Lisa Beamer Todd's widow published a book in 2003 titled Let's Roll Ordinary People, Extraordinary Courage. There was a dramatized film reconstruction of the events called Let's Roll the Story of Flight 93. It even made its way into blockbuster sci-fi. Optimus Prime says it in the 2009 movie Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
From a hijacked airplane to a blockbuster movie about giant robots, it proves how deeply the phrase had woven itself into the fundamental fabric of American hero speak.
I want to talk about one of the most surprising inclusions in the sources, because it captures the final stage of how a culture processes a heavily saturated concept dark humor. I am talking about HBO's Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yes. Season 4, Episode 9, The Survivor. This is a perfect milestone in the linguistic life cycle.
It is such a classic Larry David setup. Larry and his wife are getting ready to go out and renew their vows, and Larry inadvertently says to his rabbi, "Let's roll." The rabbi gets instantly offended. He snaps at Larry, saying, "You knew my brother-in-law died on September 11th. How dare you say something like that?"
The rabbi automatically assumes Larry is making light of the tragedy specifically because of the inescapable cultural connection to the phrase.
But Larry, being Larry, he takes issue with the rabbi's outrage. Because, as Larry points out, the rabbi's brother-in-law wasn't killed in the terrorist attacks. He died on September 11th because he was hit by a bike messenger. It was a complete coincidence of the calendar.
When a tragedy's rhetoric can be referenced in an HBO comedy without canceling the show, it signifies a cultural milestone. It means the phrase has fully integrated into the broader, complex linguistic landscape.
It's evolved again.
Exactly. If we synthesize this sprawling list, from Neil Young's immediate grief to Florida State's sports hype to Optimus Prime and finally to Larry David satire, it shows you the entire life cycle of collective trauma processing. Society uses language first for heartfelt tribute, then for motivation, and eventually it processes that intense saturation through dark humor.
So what does this all mean when we look back at the whole journey? We started this deep dive looking at wagon trains dragging heavy wooden wheels west. We looked at the suave Cary Grant trying to escape a boring conversation in the 1930s and rugged Hemingway characters barking orders. We watched that very same phrase get picked up by Todd Beamer on Flight 93, resulting in his ultimate selfless sacrifice. From there, it became a ubiquitous cultural, political, and musical symbol that dominated an entire decade of American life.
It serves as a powerful reminder to you, the listener, that the words you use every single day are alive. They aren't just sounds you make to get through your routine.
No, not at all.
They carry the immense weight of history. They absorb the courage, the politics, the grief, and the media of the generations that speak them. And I want to leave you with a thought to mull over. The next time you casually tell a group of friends, take a second to ask yourself, what other ordinary phrases in your vocabulary are secretly carrying the ghosts of monumental historical events just waiting to be uncovered?
I love that. I am definitely going to be paying way more attention to the things I say without thinking. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the everyday world around you. Keep looking for those hidden histories, and we will catch you next time.